not every church is Hillsong where you open up the door and 9,000 people show up. That's not reality. That's like the guy who smoked cigarettes till he was 120 and didn't die.
This is Church Growth with Vibrant Agency. Church Growth with Vibrant Agency.
Listen, Chris, if you wouldn't mind, please just tell us a little bit about not only your church, but also the ministry of Church Boom, some of your books. Just give us a rundown of all the different things that you're doing to help the church across America.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on. It's really awesome. I appreciate the opportunity to hang out with you guys. So we have South Hills Church. I'm the founding pastor. And so we've got multiple campuses in different cities and a couple different countries as well. We have a network of churches that we are very connected to us. And so we have a lot of those across the United States. Churchboom.org is our coaching network. We provide digital resources as well as live coaching to several hundred churches every month. And that's a big part of our church. And I think every church kind of has its thing, It's kind of like this church is all about water wells, or this church is about inner city stuff. And our church is definitely about helping pastors reach their potential. And so birthed out of that comes Church Boom and just everything we're trying to do to help coach churches. And I've written a few books. Probably the one that relates most to pastors is, two of them, probably Quit Church, and also When Your Church Feels Stuck. Seems to gotten quite a bit of attention and has hopefully been a help to people and pastors. But yeah, in Church Boom, we work primarily providing resources and all that, but really just in the coaching side, it's helping churches figure out maybe why they're stuck or plateauing and how to break through that. And so, yeah, that's kind of where most of my world is spent.
Not a lot of pastors, reach a point of success where they're going to different campuses and, having multiple locations in multiple states like you have. And then the thing that they move to is helping other pastors. That's not usually the next move. Usually it's building their, personal brand, and it's, pushing, their own, agenda and reaching their message to people, which has really good benefits. But I think that it's unique what you're doing, where you're saying, hey, we figured out something that's working and we want to help other pastors. So what came first, just the success as a church or the heart for training and coaching pastors?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love leadership. I mean, I first two books I wrote, In Search of Higher Ground and Handshake, was written based on leadership. I love the concept of leadership. I like success. I love entrepreneurship. Always own little businesses and other things. And I've always, that's been one side of it. I think the church takes on the heart of the pastor. And I really do enjoy, and this sounds self-feeding, but I really do enjoy watching other people win. And I really just do. I have a personal mission statement. I think, churches have a mission statement. I have a personal mission statement for my own life, and that is to serve people's dreams, figure out what they want, and help them get it. So I would say when we started the church, we didn't think, hey, we're going to start church and develop leaders. But it wasn't too long after. I mean, we weren't like radically successful or anything like that. But within a few years, we started off small things, just grabbing a few pastors and bringing them in, buying them lunch and talking leadership with them. And so I would say probably the church came first, but the entire time there was a hunger for leadership. And within a few years, we just thought, well, we're having a little bit of success, and maybe we could help share that with a few people that, could help figure out how to help them be successful as well. So it kind of came like that.
South Hills, where are you guys located? Where's your main campus?
Well, it's funny you say that. Main campus. We don't really have one. The original campus is in Corona, California. That would probably be a better statement, because I don't speak at one specific campus. Everything we do is live speaking. So every campus pastor isn't a video venue. It's actually live speaking. So there's multiple campuses, but they're all live now, and I don't speak at any one. Like the Corona, the original campus, I spoke last week at that campus, but that's the first time I've spoken there since September. So I float around all of our other campuses and our network campuses. So it's really kind of leveled out, as there's not really a main campus anymore. There's more of the original campus. But so in answer to your question, the answer would be original campus rather than main, and it would be Corona, California.
Give me like 2 or 3 of the top reasons why you feel, outside of the typical, God blessed it, but some practical reasons of why you feel your church expanded and some churches don't.
That is that's a great question. And if I had to give a couple, 2 or 3 reasons, one, it's something that we always teach in Church Boom. I always give this example when I travel, teach, do conferences or whatever. I always say that I always give an example of my wife and I when we went to Japan and we rode the bullet train. And the thing does like 300 miles an hour. It's a crazy train. It doesn't even feel like it's moving. And I'm wondering if we even actually did move, or they just charged us, because it felt like it didn't move the entire time. But you go like 300 miles an hour. But here's an interesting thing. If you take that train and you pick it up, the bullet train, and then put it on a train track, let's say in Texas, that was built in 1860, even though that train could go 300 miles an hour and it wants to go 300 miles an hour and it was built to go 300 miles an hour, it won't, because the train tracks won't let it. And that's the same thing with church. Every organization, the size and speed of any church will always be determined by its structure and strategy. The speed and size of a Japanese train will be determined by the structure, and the strategy will be determined by the tracks. The structure being your leadership, and the strategy being how do you actually help people grow. So in answer to that question, I would say the first 2 things that come to my mind is the structure, understanding leadership, what leadership looks like. Structure being leadership is that the average church in America is 86 people. And when you lead a church of under 100, you're leading 2 people. When you lead a church over 100 or 200, you're leading through people. Your structure has to change from leading to leading through. And so that's the structure. Now comes the strategy. How do we actually get more people to show up on Sunday? And when they do show up, then what? And when they do show up, what's the next step? Is there a strategy? Most people are very program driven, but rather than being very process driven. And how do you actually move people through those processes? So I would say structure, leadership, then I would say strategy. How do you move people from left to right? I think those are 2 of the big things. And then I think the third thing is, I think last year in America, we shut down 10,000 churches. 10,000 churches shut down in America. And that is because most people by nature, this is the third kind of problem, if you will, is that most people by nature will choose preference over purpose. They will choose, hey, we're a church of 80 and we're dying, but we like it this way, and we're going to have style of worship this way, and we're going to hang on to it. Doesn't fit the city, doesn't fit the demographic, doesn't fit the unchurched, doesn't fit the generation coming up, doesn't fit any of it, but we will choose our preference over the bigger purpose. And so I would say structure, strategy, and then the failure that we have when we choose preference over purpose.
I swear I thought you were going to go with the track being location. I was like, oh, it's where the track is. That makes sense. And then you went way better than that. That was a way better metaphor and analogy. I was like, oh, this is way better.
I was just wondering, a couple of the pastors that we've had on our show have talked about not overthinking things when you're starting a church and kind of just launching out and having a have a go kind of attitude. How much strategy and structure do you think needs to be in place before a church plant?
Yeah, I do a lot with church planters. Matter of fact, I'm teaching next month at a huge conference. About 1,000 church planters are in the room, I think there's a little bit of both. And here's what I mean. When you look at the scripture, it says, Paul says, faith without works is dead, and works without faith is dead. There's this combination, I think, of faith where it's like, man, God, we're going to believe you. We're going to go for it. man, Lord, we're going to step out in faith. We're going to go for it. We're going to plant this church. We're going to do it. I think that's the faith part. And I think that we have to have faith. And I think we got to believe God for stuff that is outside of our box and outside of our comfort zone. If we can do it within our own talent, there's no faith required. So I think that faith is a big part of it. But I do think works is a big part of it too. It's kind of like, I think once in a blue moon, someone opens up a church and it just explodes and they had no process or anything whatsoever. That's not the norm. The average church doesn't make it. The average church fails because I think that they went in going, we're just going to open the doors and trust God. And they should open the doors and trust God and have faith. But I think faith without works is dead. I think that you have to combine both. Not every church is Hillsong where you open up the door and 9,000 people show up. That's not reality. That's like the guy who smoked cigarettes till he was 120 and didn't die. Everybody else is dying with cancer. But this one guy doesn't die. Well,
my grandpa's still going strong.
That's Hillsong, But for the rest of the entire 50 million churches in the world, I think you have to have a combination of faith and you have to have a combination of strategy. And I think both are important. And I think you have to combine both and not live on one or the other.
Nice.
I like it.
That's really cool.
Ella here is born and raised in Hillsong, Australia.
Well, yeah, my daughter went there. I know Brian. I know Ben very well. We were having a lunch coming up soon, and Ben Houston and all them. But when you have a brand that big, it's like McDonald's. McDonald's opens up and everybody shows up. It's just a brand, and right now they have a brand, and that's awesome. But that's not the reality for the 330,000 churches in America. 330,000 in America. That's not.
Yeah. The New York campus of Hillsong, I went the other week and they've got a line all the way down the street to even get in.
That's not normal. So the bummer is, it's like Ben. I love it when I was talking with Ben, he goes, boy, it's really tough planting a church. I go, you didn't plant one. You opened the doors in LA.
You found the venue big enough.
Yeah.
And I'm joking with him because I love him. He's awesome. But when you have a brand that amazing, it just is. And he's awesome. I love Ben. I love all of them. But that's a brand. But it's extremely intimidating and unrealistic for the average guy living in Nebraska who's got a heart for Jesus, who's got 30 people on his launch team, and he's trying to start a church. That's not realistic for him, and that's not going to help him. He needs faith, but he also needs some strategy to help him figure out how to make this thing grow.
So the vision behind Church Boom is coaching to pastors. And I was looking on your website and it seems like, there's videos, there's tips and resources, but the heart of it is coaching. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, there's a kind of a level 1, level 2, if you will. Level 1 is very digital. A lot of training on there, videos on there, tons and tons of resources for really, really cheap because we want to keep downloading them and giving them out. And then kind of the second level is as you were talking about, is that live coaching component where we really coach them and help them figure out this is where we're at, this is where we need to get, what's it going to take to get there.
I can say like our area is websites and social media marketing, things like that. And since that's our area of knowledge, I can look at a business or a church's, marketing strategy and website and me be like, oh, it's not loading quick enough on mobile, like, or it's not got, an SSL. There's key things since it's our industry that we can see right away. For pastors, when you get a new coaching client, what are some key things, since this is your area, that you can see right away? Okay, well, obviously you're making the same mistake everybody else is. You're not doing this, or you are doing this. What are some key things that keep coming up?
I would say there's a couple things. One is one we already mentioned was strategy. They don't really have there's not a clear strategy. That comes really, really fast. There's not a clear strategy. How are we gonna move people from, let's say you're in, I don't know, we're at Portland, Oregon. How are you going to move people from the community of Portland to the crowd on Sunday morning to the core, community, crowd, core? How are you going to actually do that? And they don't really have an answer for that. I'm always, because I always tell people, there's two things: what's your mission and what's your strategy. The mission answers the what question, the strategy answers the how question. And most people don't really know how to answer the how question. How are you going to actually do that? Like, how are we going to get more people in here on Sunday? And how are you going to move people to the crowd on Sunday morning? And how are you going to get into the core where they're actually serving and involved? So I would say that would be one thing. I would say also there's usually some alignment issues. More often than not, there's alignment issues both with the vision, aligning people with the vision, and actually aligning the core team. When you take a church of whatever size, maybe they have volunteer staff or whatever, they don't have paid staff or whatever, but take your top 5, 8, 10 leaders at that church, paid or not paid. There's usually 1 or 2 that probably aren't aligned too much. Maybe they don't really believe in the vision. Maybe they like the vision, but they don't like the leader. Or maybe they think that things would be better if they were in charge. And so it usually falls in the alignment category or a kind of a strategy structure category.
Well, let's go a little deeper then. I'm a guy who's got a church in Lakeland, Florida, and we want to break through. We can't get more than 200 people. You're right. I don't have a strategy. What should my strategy be?
Yeah, well, quick version of it is we teach it. We really teach a concept, and again, I don't think our concept's any better or any better than Chris Hodges or any better than whoever. I do think that you got to pick one. I kind of always say pick it and stick it. Like just stay with it. And our thing is we live off this idea of boxes and batons. So if I were in a whiteboard, if I was with you coaching or whatever, and there was a whiteboard, I'd draw out 3 kind of boxes. And then I would say, okay, in box 1, let's call that, step 1. Box 2 is step 2. Box 3 is step 3. What's going to happen in each one of those boxes? So in step 1, we got to have an invite culture. You don't have enough first-time guests even coming to your church to even grow. So you got inside of that box, invite culture. But the invite culture leads to what? What are we inviting them to? Sunday morning. And then when they come on Sunday morning, what do you want them to do? Well, I want them to stop by our Connect Corner and learn more about our church. Okay, then Connect Corner. Then where do you want them to go? Well, I want them to go to this pastor luncheon where they can get signed up. Okay, now let's go to box 2. And so what we're doing is we're teaching this sort of flow. I call it boxes and batons. Put your strategy inside of the boxes and always think batons. So what is Sunday morning? Well, your whole goal is to get Sunday morning to get people to stop at your Connect Corner. Okay, what's the whole goal from there? To get people to go from Connect Corner to the pastor's luncheon. Okay, then what's there? Okay, from that baton, we want people to go to sign up for serving in small groups. Okay, then after that, well, we want them to get into leadership. So there's a concept of just simply thinking lineal, left to right, saying, okay, how do we actually get people to move from left to right? Most churches think from top to bottom. Here's our mission, and here's all our programs. But they don't think from left to right. How do we get people to go from community to crowd to core? And so what I would teach is, I'm giving you a 2-minute version of what takes hours, is here's the boxes, here's the batons. Now let's figure that out and let's work this system. And so I totally get boxes and batons.
I totally get what you're saying about the flow, the thinking of everything as a purpose. It's not just about come to our church, get involved. It's like, okay, they came on Sunday. So what's next step? What's the next step after that? I get the flow, but the foundation of what you said is invite culture is the word you used. So you're saying the big thing to get people to come in the first place is invite culture. Can you dive into that? Like, what does that really practically mean?
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, if you ask a pastor, the invite culture, a couple thoughts. Number one is people inviting people, friends inviting friends is by far word of mouth. It's no secret, that's always going to be the best way to do it. Word of mouth is always it. Doesn't mean we don't want to social media. Doesn't mean we don't want to advertise, et cetera, but word of mouth is always going to win. But the invite culture, if you ask a pastor, like, hey man, what do you want to do? Well, I want our church to be more generous, or I want them to invite more. I want an invite culture. I want a generous culture. I want a serving culture. There's a couple things that are important to understand about culture. Culture is created no matter what. If it's invite, serving, or generosity, the culture always changes by 3 things: the stories you tell, the heroes you make, and the things you celebrate. That will always shape culture. Stories you tell, heroes you make, things you celebrate. To sum it up in a sentence, you need to learn to tell stories about the behaviors you want repeated. What behavior do you want repeated? Well, we want people inviting people. Then tell stories about people that are inviting people. And soon
That's
the
good.
entire church will start doing it because it will take on a culture. Culture's like a river. If we're standing at a river and the river's flowing from left to right and you throw a stick in the river, it's going to go to the right because that's the way the river's flowing. Right now, people are coming into your church and they might like it and they might keep coming, but they're not going to invite anybody. Why is that? Because the river isn't flowing that way. So if you can begin to tell stories, so what does that look like practically? Well, how about you find someone that actually invited someone and do a quick iPhone interview after church with them for 1 minute and then put it on the screen next week and then pump it out on social media. Okay, then 2 weeks later, what if you did it a live interview? What if you did a video interview? What if you did, in between song 2 and 3 in worship, person doesn't want to be on stage or video, so you read their email. And you actually read the email, put it up on the screen. What if during baptisms, if you do those on Sunday, not just celebrate the person who's being baptized, but have the person who invited them up there with them and make a huge hero out of the person that did the inviting so that the rest of the church sees, wow, we celebrate, tell stories, and make heroes out of people who invite. You want to change culture, you always do it the same way. And that's how you do it with the invite culture.